Let's have a seat. So before we start, Henry, so first of all, a reminder to everybody who already bought this book. Okay.
You must buy it.
You must buy it. Just a short reminder, there's an interview also with Henry in there, with Luca Bafigo, with John Egbert, with Clive Schley. So first of all, I think you're really buying something good. And second of all, everything what we raise here, and the Griff is a big supporter of that book, goes to a kids' hospital. So you're doing something great. When you check out there at the reception at Griff, the official price is $29. Whatever is more than 20 pounds, $20, €20, etc., there's a jar. Just drop it there and take one book home. So thank you, and please don't disappoint me. I brought 150 books, and I don't want to carry one home. That would be very nice. Thank you so much. So before we start...
You don't have a ketchup jar for us?
No, we use that later.
Oh,
so
okay.
the ketchup, just I put it here that we don't forget. So before we start, guys, can we see a video that we know what we're talking about? I think that would be helpful. Thank you. Quite impressive, I have to say. Although I know it, it's always nice to see it again. 25 years, 2,300 restaurants, 2 billion sales, 300 million EBITDA, 3 billion market cap, and these emotions. Are you proud when you look back on that?
For sure.
How you feel?
It was amazing. I was a boy from North Carolina, and I came over to Central Europe for an experience, and I got way more than I bargained for. It's been an amazing journey. I just showed up in Poland not knowing anything, didn't know the language, didn't know any people. I didn't know the restaurant business. I bought
didn't know shit.
I didn't know shit. Yes, to go to the language from Gagan earlier, I didn't know a goddamn thing.
So now looking back, because obviously you know now a lot more, the takeaways. If you now look back, I know it's very difficult to put 25 years in a couple of minutes, but the 5 top learnings. So what is the 5 main moments or learnings what you capture over these 25 years?
Well, AmRest was known for just an incredible culture. So very, very people-driven. I think that came out of just trying to figure out how to make things work. So you saw in the video something called WJM culture that doesn't mean anything probably to most of you in this room, but it stands for Wszystko jest możliwe, which in and of itself is difficult to say, and it means anything is possible. And it was just what I kept trying to tell everybody, because back when communism was leaving a void, the main issue was nothing was possible, and everybody kept saying, oh, we can't do that, we can't do this, we don't have electricity, we don't have phones, we don't have whatever. So that was the first one, just teaching everybody to go with the sense of possibility rather than not possible. And we created a whole culture of fun. The next thing is very counterintuitive. Pretty much everything we did in the business was counterintuitive. I didn't have any restaurant experience. None of our senior executives had ever worked in the restaurant business, not a single one of them. We went and we started, I started with a franchise because I didn't know restaurants, so I thought a franchise was the best way to go. We crossed borders, very difficult, but we ended up starting up in 26 countries, and I think everybody here in the restaurant business knows that's probably the hardest thing, is how to cross borders. Then we went from QSR to casual dining. We went from being a franchisee to owning brands and being a franchisor. So being very counterintuitive. The third thing would just be massive amount of training and development. Another thing you saw in the video was something called review boards. We had thousands and thousands of them. And a review board basically was a university oral exam, if you can picture sort of a graduating thesis. Every single person in a company of 50,000 people that was going to get promoted sat down in front of their boss and 3 other people for 2 or 3 hours, conversation covering everything from their personal lives to their business views to their competence in their role, and that decided if they would be promoted or not. So a massive investment, that's tens of thousands of hours a year, and people don't imagine that. The third thing was, out of the same thing, just the culture that developed. We were very young as a company. 1996, my senior team and I decided to go to Sweden on a weekend retreat to try and figure out strategy and values, etc. And that set the core values. And I think in the next 23 years, only like 4 words on that whole page changed. So it was very true to who we were. It was very true to what we thought was going to make a difference. And it kind of never changed. And then the fifth one was just around all of it goes back to the first one, but it has a lot to do with the banks and the infrastructure, private equity groups, banks, boards. Everybody kind of tells you to slow down. More control, slow down, it's possible to do a lot more. This business is tough. Everybody who's in it knows it's brutal. I mean, we're in one of the worst businesses probably in the world, right? Because it's so brutal. But for 27 years, we grew the company 25% a year compounded growth rate, from 1 restaurant to 2,300. And you don't do that by listening to, it can't be done, building 300 restaurants a year. It's a lot, but it's so doable if you trust your people. I loved what Gagan was talking about. Just take your people, trust them after training and development. You got to make sure they're ready. That's why review boards. And as soon as you're at that point, unleash their potential, and it's phenomenal what can be done.
Don't slow down.
Don't slow down, no matter how big you get.
I remember I want to talk about a big disruption, what hit this industry, what are the aggregators. And I remember we had always in this advisory board, and you saw it coming very, very early days, and nobody kind of was listening. But then you acted, and you were the first brand in our industry what did a backwards integration. Now looking back on how much was changing, how you now see that whole disruption, how big is it, what is still up there, how big was this disruption of aggregators, of delivery?
Yeah, it's one of my regrets, we can say, because I feel like I should have pushed harder, back to what I said. I had the idea that aggregators were going to disrupt the business. I mean, I think the writing was on the wall that it was the fastest growing part of our business. And we had it all in-house, and you saw this developing. So I wanted to buy an aggregator or really launch one heavily. But that takes totally remaking the company, because we all know the aggregators have lost billions of dollars building it. And so when you're only valued at $2 billion, it's kind of hard to spend hundreds of millions losing money in a public company, because I took the company public in 2006. But I did manage to buy one from Delivery Hero for Central Europe, and we managed to take a stake in Glovo. Probably most of you here know Glovo, the leader in Spain. And they were both fantastic investments. So the disruption, probably everybody feels it and sees it. I think it's still coming more and more. We haven't figured out the technology of cloud kitchens and how to build virtual brands. I think that's going to be very difficult, by the way, to build virtual brands. But it's going to happen. The technology is going to get better on the delivery side. Autonomous vehicles definitely are coming in 7 years. It's not going to be tomorrow like we were told a few years ago, but it is going to be in the next 7 years, especially with smaller delivery pieces. So I think there's going to be continued a lot more disruption. It's going to be interesting how it plays out because each side, the aggregator and the restaurants, are trying to figure out a P&L that makes money because the aggregators are just getting there. So what they have doesn't quite work, and the restaurant cloud kitchen doesn't quite work. And in the restaurant, it takes a very big brand with a lot of deliveries to make it work. So everybody needs to still figure this piece out. So I think disruption's going to continue, but there's money going to continue to flow.
Amazing numbers that there was much more money raised in this field than
in 3 years, the aggregators of Europe raised more money than the entire restaurant IPO market of the last decade. So you have to put that in perspective. Like the entire industry's IPO proceeds in a decade were less than the money that flowed into the aggregators in 3 years.
And I really think sometimes when we sit together, even in our industry, and we chat just in Madrid, I think we're not aware what is happening because the massive of money would flow to that. And what I want to talk about next, because we were covering that, first of all, Henry wanted to join me a week vegan. We said we spent a week together and he wanted to join me in the vegan. You did manage half a day. But I want to talk about this disruption. You believe a lot that the alternative protein is the next big disruption. So how you see that? Tell us about that.
He's right. I didn't last the first day because we went to a beautiful Galician restaurant in Madrid, and how the hell I was supposed to be vegan, I have no idea. All those fresh seafood. But yesterday I did manage to go vegan with you, and today am I? I don't know. But anyway. Alternative proteins. I think alternative proteins, most of us think about it right now as the Beyond Meat and the Impossible Burger, just what's happening with, call those vegetarian burgers. The alternative protein side is going to expand pretty dramatically, I think, and not just be vegetables trying to taste like meat, because that doesn't feel quite right, and it's highly processed and a lot of salt in it. So you first see things happening with mycelium from mushrooms. They're growing very large, fiber-rich mycelium products that have a lot more fiber to work with, and therefore I think taste more like the pieces of meat that we have. But also we're getting very close on lab-grown meat coming into the right pricing, and this is very ethical. No drugs, no hormones, no nothing in the entire process. It's going to be the absolute perfect cut of meat. If we want a Wagyu sirloin or we want a ribeye or whatever, it's going to be grown from that particular cell. And this is much, much closer than most of us think. So just the variety. I mean, you introduced me to the guy from Neat Burger today. We're seeing brands like that get launched. Flour Burger, very much brands built off of this way of thinking. The next wave is going to be a wider choice because you're going to have, I think they won't have to act like they're meat. We're going to have proper vegan or vegetarian burgers that people are proud of, and they're going to sit right next to blended. They're going to sit right next to lab-grown. So there's quite a range coming. All of it, more environmentally friendly, more ethically friendly, all the way around. I think people are going to just feel better about what they're eating and have more choices. So it's coming at a price point. It's coming at a time where everybody's awareness is up on the environmental issues associated with agriculture and meat. So it just feels like the right timing and the right focus, and it's going to be great for us because I think the distribution of these products is going to be even easier than the legacy products they're replacing.
True. So now we looked a lot back on your 25 years, but you close the chapter, you move on, and this is also an investment conference, and you're hosting tomorrow in a jury where several concepts will pitch, so maybe you invest. But when you now look out there, what's your criterion? In what do you invest? What is important for you? If you now have a room full of great concepts, great entrepreneurs, what is what you look at?
Well, I have to stick true. So you heard when Sven introduced me. My title was CEO, of course, but it stood for Chief Emotional Officer. And I was really dead serious about it. It came to me as an idea in 2012. We were having, so the video you watched was from our 25th anniversary a year ago. But our 20th anniversary, I was thinking about what I could do to really differentiate the culture further. We were getting so big, I didn't know everybody in the company. And I decided on really just being known for continuing to drive the emotions of everybody in the company. And that's when I self-proclaimed my title as Chief Emotional Officer. So sticking with that, people, team, making sure the passion is there. We've seen so many cases when we tried to cross borders, and trust me, I screwed up about every way you can cross a border and lost plenty of money doing it and figuring that out. But so much of it was dependent on the belief and passion coming out of the team. So that concepts, it's such a funny one. I had a guy call me from Scandinavia, and he had just opened in 3 countries, and we were talking on the phone. I didn't really know his concept, but I said, well, these are the things that I've seen. He said, how did you know every problem we were going to have? And it's just the way it is. International is this funny mix of you don't want to change anything in the brand, but you have to be willing to change everything in the brand. And figuring out that where you fall on that is the hardest thing about it. So some real discussion around that. And then a lot of people don't put in the operational training development discipline. It's a brutally disciplined business, and I'm unorganized and not disciplined at all. But you got to know, I've had people on my team that everybody sort of said our names at the same time. If there was Henry, there had to be Drew, and we just had to match up to have those skills. And so that would be the third piece that I would look at. I think the financing today is available. So if you've got a good concept that you understand the discipline of the P&L, you can take care of that piece, but it's the other 3 that are so tough.
And as we have a lot of young entrepreneurs, I mean, Sven just introduced us, Ron was moderating, and we were chatting before. All of them have a great concept, great future ahead. So what advice would you give them? What should they do?
Well, the first piece of advice you heard, don't listen to everybody says it can't be done, because the restaurant industry is filled with that. The banks don't want to lend us money until it's already a proven concept, and landlords don't want to give us the space until it's already a proven concept, and all of those pieces fight against us. So be a believer and just keep going. Lead from the top. It's a people business. Everybody wants to feel your energy. And I made a funny situation. Going back in time, when I came over to Europe, I had no intention to stay. And I just came for a life experience when the Berlin Wall fell, and I wanted to see what it was going to be like. So I didn't plan to own and control the company. I think probably the most unique thing about my story is what we achieved despite the fact that it didn't have a controlling shareholder, and I worked from a minority position most of the time. So I would be very thoughtful about the partnerships you make, that they really can add value and drive the business forward. It's something people overlook, but there's a massive failure rate in the restaurant business for a reason, and that's because it's difficult, and it usually involves multiple stakeholders into it, and so you get one of those wrong. And that leads me to something you've heard me teach a lot. I taught a course on leadership at AmRest, and it's those 3 pillars of strategy, structure, and culture. And the strategy, structure, and culture have to align. If there's any conflicts between them, it kind of dies. So really put a lot of discipline into what are my values, what's my strategy, what's the structure of the way we're organized, and do I have the culture to back it up? And if you have those sort of pillars in place, it's a lot easier when you make mistakes, which we all do, to keep it sort of on track.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Henry before I come to my final one? Anybody wants to hear? One at the front. What's next?
What's next? Well, it's a hard one. I'm so blessed. I stayed here much longer than I thought. I kept saying within the company 2 more years, and I thought my life would change. My son just started playing hockey in the Czech Republic, and he's doing great. So it looks like we're going to stay in Europe for a while longer. So it's not 2 more years. It's, I can say, probably 5 more years. I love the industry. A lot of financial advice to don't be an idiot and think you can do anything else. Stick to what you know. So I probably ought to continue to get involved in the restaurant space. I have great friends in the space. One of them sitting next to me here. And so I'm looking forward to figure out how do I take, you know, what I think has been a pretty damn unique experience and share that into the restaurant space. So I have a lot of fun being with you on, you know, the European Food Service Summit and things like that, and just figuring out what's the next move for the industry. I've invested in alternative meats, as we talked about, alternative proteins. I think the sustainability side of food is a fascinating piece right now. I think the science behind it is great. The whole molecular biology side of what's going on. You know, Beyond Meat has 100 food scientists, molecular scientists on its payroll. So if you think you're gonna, you know, if you think any normal company is gonna compete against 100 food scientists trying to figure out what the next steps are for the industry. So I'm really interested in the science and the direction that it's going. I prided myself, I think I can unhumbly say for a second that I really tried hard to be 3 years ahead of the industry. I was always telling my executive team, we've got to stay 3 years ahead of the industry. So I'm sort of in that mind frame right now of just how do I stay 3 years ahead and what does that mean? And I'm not 100% designed in that yet, but I'm working on it.
Trying. You're definitely an incorporation of anything impossible. Thanks for sharing that. Big hand to Henry.
Thank you.
And a hug. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
And don't forget to buy the book, guys. And maybe some ketchup. Sven, back to you.
Mario, thank you. And Henry, thank you for sharing your amazing story. Thanks.